Hey everyone, welcome to the Monday, October 24th, 2022 Winchester Select Board meeting. I'm Rich Mucci, Chair of the Select Board. With me this evening is Anthea Brady, Vice Chair, Marielle Guluboff, John Fallon, Mike Betancourt, and our Acting Town Manager, Beth Rudolph. We have a busy night, so we're going to jump right into it, and I'd ask for to start with the acceptance of donations.
I move we accept with gratitude 2 ARPA stabilization grants to the Recreation Department for August, September, and October disbursements in the amount of $16,333.33 for each month to be used for the Rap Kid Connection, and the other in the amount of $5,416.17 for each month to be used for the Lynch After School Program.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye. I move we accept with gratitude donations of $950 to the Council on Aging for appreciation of services provided by the Council on Aging, $194 for socialization services, and $20 for transportation purposes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. Beth, go to your report next.
Sure, thank you. I just have a few general updates. First, there is one remaining general public flu clinic to be held on Monday, November 7th from 5 to 7:30 p.m. at the high school. You can sign up online for that. Fall town meeting starts on Thursday, November 10th, and is expected to continue for at least 3 nights. So Monday, November 10th, 14th, and then Thursday, November 10th, Monday, November 14th, and Thursday, November 17th. And the town manager's hearing is scheduled for Thursday, November 3rd at 6:30 p.m. via Zoom. The state election will be held on Tuesday, November 8th at the Winchester High School. There's a vote by mail option as well as early voting that is happening right now at Town Hall almost every day of the week. So you can find a time online to come into Town Hall, both during the week and on weekends. Transfer station leaf drop-off is being scheduled. The transfer station will be open on Sundays during the month of November and the first Sunday in December from 12 to noon for leaf drop-off only, not for any other trash or recycling drop-off.
12 to 4, right?
Sorry, 12 to 4. Yep. I'm pleased to announce that the Jenks Center has received a grant from the Winchester Mount Vernon House to help fund Saturday programs at the Jenks Center from 8:30 to 2:30 each week. If you're interested, you can find out more about that on the Jenks Center website. A few construction updates. Eversource is moving forward with work on the 345 line on Cross Street. There's some detours that are happening right now. They're also moving forward with the directional drill under the Abergena River at the Washington Street crossing near the 620 Washington Street property. Eversource on the 115 kV line is finishing up work on the directional drill under the river at the Abergena River near the Wedgemere train station. So if you were in that area, there was a pipe that was run down the middle of Bacon Street over the past week or so. That pipe has been installed, and they're in the process of cleaning up Bacon Street. We're also moving full speed ahead on the replacement of the Manchester Field turf that was pulled up last week, and they'll be out there over the next few weeks to get the field put back together with the goal of having the Thanksgiving Day football game here in Winchester. A few community events I wanted to mention. There's a concert to benefit Winchester Got Lunch on this Wednesday, November 26th at the Griffin Museum. There's a safe disposal for medications and needles scheduled for Saturday, November 29th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the transfer station. The Fans Halloween Bash is scheduled for this upcoming Saturday with a parade beginning at the Jenks parking lot at 9:45, followed by trick-or-treating in the town center. I think this is one of the best events we have in town every year for kids and adults, so I think hopefully everybody can take part. And then the Winchester Coalition for a Safer Community is holding an evening with Harry Cunane on Monday, November 24th at 7 p.m. in the Winchester High School. And I just wanted to mention that Town Hall will be closing early on Halloween at 5 p.m. next Monday. That's all I had. Thank you.
Any questions for Beth on the update?
We can't trick-or-treat at Town Hall?
No trick-or-treating at Town Hall.
Budget cuts this year.
Costumes are welcome, however.
I know you mentioned the early voting. I just wanted to thank the town clerk as well as all the poll workers. We voted here on Saturday, and it was great. Just in, out in 5 minutes, no crowds, and it's great that we have all those volunteers, poll workers, to staff that. So if anybody wants to vote and avoid the crowds on election day, they can come vote at Town Hall.
Thank you to them. And I got my flu shot before this meeting today at the flu clinic at the Winchester High School. It was pretty painless and easy, so I highly recommend that for anyone looking for a flu shot. There's one more November 7th. So thank you to all those volunteers as well. Okay, at this point, I'd open it up to public comment. Anybody who's here to wish to give public comment on items on our agenda, with the exception being, if you're here for the public hearing on Woodside traffic, I'd ask you to wait until we call that. But if anybody's here for any other topic, you can come forward, state your name, state where you live, and you can have up to 3 minutes to give a public comment. Is anyone here for public comment other than Woodside Avenue projects? All right, seeing no one, we will move on. We will move to our first actual public hearing, which is a change of ownership for a common vicular license. Is Gina here? Oh, come on up, Gina. So I'll call this hearing to order. So it looks like this is a change in ownership for a common vicular license from Ernest Desir to yourself, Gina.
Correct.
And is your last name Chiaco?
Chachi, close.
Gotcha. Should know that. For Bagels and Brew at 748 Main Street.
That's it.
So it sounds like everything's in order,
Yes. Yep.
application-wise. All right. Any questions for Gina?
Gina, what's your plan of action? You gonna be open more, or what's?
Yeah, so we're going to expand the hours. Initially, we're going to move in. We're going to just try to, get our feet wet, see what's happening in the space. And then, we want to definitely open the hours longer, so earlier in the morning, a little later in the afternoon, kind of get going to work. And then people, the high school kids would be a nice little crowd to get.
You got
And
some
then-
bagels?
Yes, we have bagels.
Okay.
We have bagel sandwiches. We
All
have
right.
the whole works. So come on down.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Anything else from the board? Anyone from the public here wish to comment on this change of ownership? All right, seeing no one, I'd ask for a motion.
Move we approve the common victualler license, change of ownership from Ernest Desir to Gina Marie Chatio for Bagels and Brew at 748 Main Street.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none. Good luck, Gina.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank
thanks
you.
for coming in.
Thank you.
Coming.
Thank you all.
Next up, we have a public hearing on the Woodside traffic calming and sidewalk improvements. And I think we have representatives of Tool here. Come on up, Erica. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm going to just give a 30-second background
Please do.
how we got here. So Karen Fitzgerald from Tool Design Group is here. Back in 2017, I think it was, the Friends of Winter Ponds and the neighbors in the Woodside Road area met with then town manager Richard Howard, and we worked with Tool to put together a corridor study of potential improvements, traffic improvements along Woodside Road, and then also looked at some potential landscaping improvements along Winter Pond that the Friends of Winter Pond were interested in. This project came out of that initial effort, and we were able to use a portion of the funding that we got from Eversource, the mitigation funds we got from Eversource, to complete the design work. So Karen can kind of give an overview of what the proposed project is. Capital Planning has voted to move forward with the funding of this project at Springtown meeting. The only one item is that Eversource has agreed to, assuming the board wants to move forward, Eversource has agreed to install the speed humps as part of their repaving efforts on Woodside Road. So that would be something that would be done separate from the rest of the construction. And with that, I'll turn it over to Karen.
So Bethel, before we dive in, can I ask you a question? Speed humps, is there an issue, because I drive through there frequently. I don't see a lot of traffic, but B, I don't see a lot of speeders. So the speed humps, did we do a study and it turns out there was actually a lot of speeding there?
I don't know if you want to take it, but
I don't want to be
it
thunder,
was
so-
something that,
Get right into the speed.
Yes, let's go.
yeah.
I can
Just
wait.
from the historicals perspective,
Yes.
it was something that, so the speed limit through that corridor is actually 20 miles per hour.
Yep.
And it's something we've heard quite a bit over the years from the abutters and from other neighbors about the concern about the speeds going through that
Well, we don't know
neighborhood.
if they're speeding. We just-
Well, I'll let Karen kind of
Okay.
take that
I just want to
traffic
because,
piece of it,
yeah.
but yeah, I mean, that's how it,
That's
how it,
that road. I've been passed, I was going 20 miles an hour, the speed limit, and somebody passed me.
Yeah.
And they're still passing.
Yeah, no, I was
Probably
double
John.
yellow line.
well saying.
I think it was John. Seems to be in a hurry. Karen, why don't we let you give us
Yeah.
your data?
Okay. Karen Fitzgerald, I'm with Tool Design. I'm a landscape architect. I'm not a traffic engineer, but I do have background on this project, as well as having lived in the area years ago. So as Beth stated, we did a traffic study in 2017 and looked at the speeding in this area, recommended some traffic calming in this area. And I don't have that study with me tonight, but it was flagged as between, Woodside, Wildwood, all the way up to Pond. Like, that is a cut through, and there was a concern about speeding along here. Plus, as you know, like, this is a very active spot for skating and just fishing, fishing, canoeing, kayaking, that kind of thing. We had some plans about the parking area and the speed humps. We presented those to the town in April of 2021, and then moved into the NOI submission. We worked with the BSC group on that. Met with the Friends of the Winter Pond, as well as the Conservation Commission members last August out on site in relation to the NOI submission. Recently, I met with the TTAC at their regular meeting just to present the area, and there weren't really many concerns there. And then the Concom issued an order of conditions recently as it pertains to the NOI, and was really mostly around the planting, which I'll talk to you in a bit about, around the seating area. So very sensitive sort of pond side slopes there, and we had proposed some planting there to reestablish the edge. And that's where we are today. Just quick existing conditions. This is the edge where people park. There are these old phone poles that are keeping people from going beyond. Little seating area. Kiosk. It was donated by one of the high school classes. I can't remember the year. There's a little plaque on that. And a trash. And then there are many sort of footpaths down to the pond, the big winter pond. You can see this edge here on the left side picture, how steep it can get there. And then these are some of the items that will be removed as part of this. We'll just get rid of the phone poles, and then the town can reclaim the granite for their use. Again, you can see someone out there enjoying the fishing. This little granite bench down near the pond. As you know, there have been new sidewalks on both sides, which is fantastic, and we're going to meet the new sidewalk right at where the culvert is that goes between the two ponds, and that's where we start our new sidewalks. This is just our final design plan, just put some color on it for your benefit. The sort of brownish tan is the parking area. Yellow is the sidewalk, and the blue is the seating area. And these are just sort of some of the bigger goals that we were trying to accomplish here. Traffic calming with the speed humps are 2. You can see 2 on either end of the project area. Pedestrian access, just filling that gap with the new sidewalks. And we also have designed in a pedestrian ramp that will go from the parking area up to the sidewalk, the new sidewalk. And then update the amenities in the seating area, additional bench, a couple bike racks. We'll rebuild the kiosk. We're not going to replace it completely, but we can take the roof off. The the structural pieces will need to be redone because we can't move it without getting rid of those. And then controlling the embankment. Our limit of work is really where those phone poles are. We didn't go beyond the top of bank there. And that's where we have proposed some planting areas just to cover the disturbed area. And as I just reiterated, this is a sort of close-up view of that seating area. 2 speed humps. The gravel part, compacted gravel area will be parking. There'll be a flush granite edge, which I'll show you in a second, between the road and the gravel area to prevent that sort of breaking off of the road edge as it meets the gravel. And then a curbed concrete sidewalk, 4 feet wide. The parking area is 8.5 feet wide. We estimate about 9 cars can park there with this new design. And then the overlook area is a compacted sort of stone dust surface. The benches are on concrete pads, and as is the trash and the bike. And these are just some of the amenities. The new bench will match the existing one. We'll move the existing bench, new trash, and a couple bike loops. And then the kiosk, we will just replace those sort of vertical pieces and reuse the roof structure. This is sort of a photo of the flush curb, so it's trying to prevent what you see there on the right, where you can see where the road just breaks off as people like go from one surface to the other. So this will keep a nice clean edge to the road there. And then the speed hump, 2 speed humps. Someone asked, what's the difference between a speed hump and a speed bump? And speed humps are wider. They're usually not as high as a speed bump. You see the speed bumps are just, smaller things. So these are wider, easy for plows to go up and over, but they do slow down traffic. And that's sort of our detail that we're working with there. And that's what I have. Questions?
Questions from the board? Karen? Seems like this project's been in the works for a while now.
Yeah.
I assume, all the necessary groups have given feedback. Concom.
Yeah, we've gotten
Friends,
our order of conditions. We've met with the Friends of Winter Pond several times, and we met with T-TAC a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And the order of conditions, I think it will just be an allowance for planting, and as we get into the project, we can see what's needed out there.
We'll continue to work with those groups on the planting and stuff.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
What's the amount that capital is recommended?
So I think the amount that we had requested was just like $275,000, which I think will, if Eversource does move forward with the construction of the speed humps, we might be able to revisit that in the spring. But with the cost of prices kind of escalating the way they are, we probably end up around the.
Eversource would pay for the speed humps, right?
Eversource will be installing the speed humps. That's the plan. Yep.
I mean, they're there right now,
Right.
filling the roads.
Right. They've indicated to the DPW director they'll do the paving this fall, but they're not going to do the speed humps until the spring.
What's the noise level of the speed humps versus like a speed bump? Is it quieter or?
I think so. I mean, you don't bump. It's
Right.
You kind of go up and over it. I'm trying to think of a place where there are some that are nearby, but
Grove Street and,
Yeah, Grove Street,
And then
Medford, yeah.
okay.
That's where I see.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Yeah. And we'll leave a gap between the curb and the top, the beginning of the speed hump, so there's some drainage there, and it won't get, trapped behind in snow plowing, et cetera.
If there's no further questions from the board, I'd invite anyone from the public who has any comment on this project to come forward. Happy to hear you. Come on up. Can you come up to the table and have a seat? Just introduce yourself and state your name and where you live.
I'm Gail Buck. I've been living in the area for 23 years, and I'm at the corner of Chesterford Road and Woodside. And actually, I grew up in Arlington, so I've skated Winter Pond my whole life. I'd love to see the speed limit reduced. I mean, it is a nightmare, a total nightmare. Coming out of my street onto Woodside and coming into Woodside, it's just been awful. So I always want to see something done, you know, with that part. Like I say, people have passed me by, just going on Woodside. They don't want to wait. And I know the abutters at the end of the street have had a hard time. So I'm welcoming speed humps, anything, to cut it down, you know. So that's what I just want to say. It's been a nightmare, actually my whole life. So thank you for bringing this up.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? I see Ben. Ben, do you want to come on up, talk about, I know TTAC was presented with this a couple weeks.
I've been Keeler. Appreciate it. Nice to see you.
Hey.
Yeah, so a couple comments. This project has been going on for, I was just looking at my documentation. I think the first plans that I saw were like 2017. So I think when you came, and thank you for coming and attending TTAC. I don't think those are a lot of questions because this is essentially, you know, finishing the job that we've been talking about for a while. So, you know, all I'd say is, one, really appreciate what the DPW has done in that corridor already. You know, so they've, Jay stretched his budget to help link together sidewalks, which are already done, which has been great and fantastic. We are supportive of speed humps. We always have been in this location. Part of the reason abutters were, you know, saying that there were cars going 50 plus miles an hour through there at times, and we have data. I was looking for it. I can't find it right this second. But the other thing is that it's not a road that's appropriate for trucks, and as a cut through, it was becoming you know, more. There was more truck cut throughs as well. So, you know, we thought it was appropriate just to support speed humps in this area. It would be our first. Other than the temporary ones on Main Street, so we applaud that. That's a positive development in our mind. The other thing I just mentioned, the thing that's not part of this plan that was discussed for a long time is a crosswalk right in the middle, and we talked about that. It doesn't, for safety purposes, I don't think the sight lines aren't appropriate. We had talked about having a crosswalk right in the middle for a long time to improve recreational activity, and again, that was part of the thinking with the speed humps, was to make sure that people slowed down. It doesn't sound like there's you know, the opportunity to add a crosswalk, but we still think that it's probably, maybe in this case, more appropriate. People are going to cross between the two areas, and so I think giving them a little bit of a break again is welcome. The concern with speed humps is obviously the noise, but I will say that, and I won't say it's 100%, but abutters, including former members of TTAC, were supportive.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, one thing to add is that a lot of kids walk to school here, to Lynch. In fact, there's a crossing guard while we're in Woodside, so between the crossing guard and the school, they have to go through this road, and cars just speed by. And also, it's during the day, it's used a lot by joggers and cyclists that access the because there's an access to the Horn Pond
Right. On the end. Yeah.
right there at the end. So it's a heavily trafficked by pedestrians and cyclists as well. So I think reducing the speeds. We know that speed limit signs don't work, so anything we can do, I'm fully in support of.
Sounds good. Do you need us to
Yeah, I
vote?
think a vote to support, if they're so inclined, the design as shown would help us move it forward.
I move that the board supports the design for the Woodside traffic calming and sidewalk improvements as presented in the October 24th meeting.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Thank you, Karen. Thank you all.
Okay, moving right along, we have two candidates here for an open Board of Appeals alternate position with a term expiring March 31st, 2023, so in a few months. I see John and William both here. One of you want to come first, the interview?
Sure.
Just want to state your name for the record, and
My name is William Fouché.
nice to meet you, William. We were able to
Please
receive...
call me Bill.
Bill, we received your resume and the packet. Is there anything else you want to tell the board?
Yeah, a brief introduction. I first have to say thank you. I first want to thank you for considering me for the position. I have to say I'm not a lifelong resident of Winchester. As of November 1st, I will only have been here 32 years. I'm a retired architect with over 40 years of experience in the field, and most of my experience, while it's been with very large, complex hospitals, I want to mention a period that's more relevant to the position where I was part of a development firm in New Hampshire doing large projects for New Hampshire from 1984 to 1988. I was first hired as a project manager for half a block development in Concord, 2 blocks from the State House, and then I proceeded as part of my job to do feasibility studies for other sites that the developer was interested in. In doing so, I planned a subdivision of 13 lots in Hollis, New Hampshire. I conceptually designed and planned a 74-unit condominium building on the north side of Manchester along the river that was, the design was executed by a local architect, but I did the conceptual design. I wanted to bring that up because as part of a development firm, I developed sensitivities to that part of the business, to the developer's role in the development of a project. I also have to say that in 2016, I was the architect and the general contractor and the framing and demolition subcontractor for an addition we did to our house on 87 Church Street so that my wife and I could age in place at 87 Church Street. In that project, I got to know Al Weil because obviously I needed a permit to do it, and that gave me insight to what the owner of a property experiences in these type of approval processes. As I said, I'm retired, and so I have a lot of time. I would expect to attend all the meetings and be versed in all the applications that come, because as I understand it, if a regular member is not present for a continuation, then the alternate member must have been part of the original submittal or meeting with the board. And let's see, there was one other thing I wanted to say, but I forgot. Are there any questions?
Questions for Bill? I don't have any. Thank you for applying. We'll hear from John first and then make a decision.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
John Stevens, known to at least some of you. John, I haven't met you before, but otherwise, I think. I think Bill has a pretty impressive resume. You already have 4 lawyers on the board. So I certainly would be happy to serve, but obviously it's a decision that you folks make. You certainly are aware of my background locally, or at least my guess is that you are. The Fells, Mariana, you mentioned that the last time. So I don't think I have anything else to say specifically. Certainly Bill is well qualified, and as I say, he's an architect, and you already have 4 attorneys. So. Questions that any of you folks have for me?
Any question for John?
Maybe, John, why you're interested in this position in particular?
Well, as a consequence, I wasn't paying attention when I was first retired. I didn't pay attention to zoning. I certainly had time in 15 and 16 as the new bylaw was coming into place, and I regret that omission. I'm interested in simply watching the process. Clearly, I live in an area that is not, I take that back. The ZBA would have jurisdiction in the area in which I live on Vine Street, but the planning board, the litigation that I'm currently involved with, that is subject to decisions by the planning board. So, again, the fact that there's litigation ongoing, that may present a concern. So, I understand.
Okay. Any other questions for John? All right. Hearing none.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
So it looks like this is a really short term, right? March 31st, 2023. So we're talking a few months. This is to fill a seat that was vacated. I can't remember the gentleman's name. Marty. Yeah.
And he was replacing somebody else that vacated it.
Okay. So I just want to state where I sit on this at this point. I first want to thank both candidates for coming in. You both, Bill Foucher, you're certainly highly qualified to serve on the board, and John, very involved in the town as well. So what I'm about to say is not, any reflection on your candidacy or your qualifications. I think, you both could contribute. My concern with the Board of Appeals right now is that it seems to be generating a lot of concern amongst people that participate in the process. And there's concern out there that, they've kind of gone a different way that they've kind of operated before, which is if, the 3 members, permanent members, are the ones that will hear all the cases, and then an alternate would only step in if one of those permanent members couldn't be a part of that. So we have 2 alternates on there right now. We typically have 3 that really aren't, unless somebody's one of the permanent members are absent, really don't have any participating role in the board. I think giving what we're, and I know David Feigenbaum and I have met, what they're trying to do at the CBA level with different initiatives. At this point, given the shortness of this term, I would like us to leave this position vacant at this point, and then revisit it in March when it becomes a full term, when it's up for election at that point, and see where we sit with the board and what direction they're heading and how the initiatives that they're working on, and kind of over the next few months work with the ZBA and planning board and figure out the different avenues that need to be addressed so that the public feels a little bit more comfortable in the process. So that's kind of where I sit at this point. I mean, that's kind of a long-winded statement, but I just think at this point, we have 2 alternates on there. This is a very short term, only for a few months. I think we need to take that time to just, you know, figure out a direction for the Board of Appeals and what makeup we're looking for there, because we have, you know, it's been a lot. We've had a lot of turnover there in the past. It's been, you know, tough on our staff at times. You know, there's a lot going on in this town building-wise, and I just think, you know, I know David's working hard to kind of revamp that process. So I think we just need to collectively figure out what's in the best interest of the town. And the last thing I would want to do is just appoint a member on there for a few months. You know, when we have an opportunity, maybe in March, to, you know, revamp that process. That's just where I sit. So I just wanted to get that statement on the record. I don't know where everyone else stands on it.
From a governance standpoint, I hear about the ZBA the most with dissatisfaction. Not that I get a lot of them, but a few. So I frankly need to drill down more and understand about what the genesis of those issues are. So I wouldn't. I'm with you, Rich. I'm not in a position to really vote another person onto that until I get a better understanding. It's nothing about the candidates, the quality of the candidates. I hope you can understand that. So thank you for applying.
Has that board made a recommendation to leave that seat open?
No, they haven't made a recommendation either way. And typically, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, they typically don't make a recommendation. It's our appointment.
I guess I would, you know, I would like to know if the board would prefer to leave a seat open versus if they have a need to fill that seat at this point.
My concern is the way that the ZBA has been operating, and I think Rich mentioned this a little bit, is that there are the 3 main members, and they're the only ones that are allowed to comment or weigh in and be part of any of the decision-making process. So you've got alternates who historically have always been there to be a part of the process and to weigh in and give feedback, not just if a regular member isn't there. And so I've seen, I think it's just going to be hard to keep people on the ZBA if they're just sitting there and they're not allowed to talk, you know. And so, again, I think that there's some work being done to reevaluate the process, but things seem a little bizarre. Outcomes, I don't think, are great for the community. And as John said, this is where I seem to get the most complaints from residents, and not necessarily even just people that are aggrieved by decisions, but the process itself. And I don't know, I'm just uncomfortable where we're at. And I think I haven't been part of the decisions that, or the communications with the chair or anything, but I hope we can get to a better place with things. But it seems to me we should pump the brakes here too. It's a good suggestion.
I don't know. I haven't heard a single complaint from a resident about the CBA in 5 years that I've been, on the 5.5 years I've been on this board. Nobody's called me to complain about the CBA. I hear a lot about traffic and schools, even though we don't. That's a school committee. But, yeah, so I'm not sure. It's strange to me that we posted the position if we decided to leave it open, right? So, and we had 2 very qualified candidates, so I'd hate to say, well, we posted the position and then we changed our mind. And it seems like the reasoning is not that we need to leave it open, but it's that we don't like, if I'm paraphrasing, but 3 people that are there right now. Not appointing somebody doesn't, or appointing somebody doesn't change that to me. So, I don't know, it seems like well, both are very qualified, but as John mentioned, there's already several attorneys there, so if we were to appoint somebody, I think Bill would bring a point of view of an architect that would make sense. But
Yeah, no, I mean, I've heard a lot about the ZBA, especially in the last, 9 months. And I know, meeting with David, seeing emails, I think there's a lot of change going on over there in terms of, anything from the forms all the way to different initiatives that are out there, and decisions being made. And there's a lot in the air right now. And I think we need to get some of that settled, before we appoint anyone else to that board and figure out, what's best for the community. Sometimes I think, we appoint people to these boards, with very little information, a 5-minute interview, and then, that person's, on there for a number of years, and, it's great to have the volunteers in the town, but I think a position such as the ZBA carries a significant role in this town, especially with, some of the bigger projects we have going on. And I just think, giving the balls in the air that, will be coming, towards this board and maybe the planning board in the next, few weeks, months after town meeting, I just think we need to, evaluate that process. And I think John said it best and more eloquently than I said it, but, it's hard for me to appoint someone else to that board without, wrapping my hands around that situation. So
I understand. Like I said, I've never heard a complaint about it.
So Mario, you bring up a good point, though. For example, I didn't know it was 4 attorneys, but one of the things I wanted to understand was who was on. So I went and understood what the mission was, and then I wanted to understand who's on there, but I didn't know where to go to find out what their backgrounds are. Where do I find that out? So when I'm here having to make a decision, but I really don't know the complexion of that group. And I like to have balance. I think balance is good. If someone's a sympathetic developer, someone's sympathetic to residents, for conservationists, but I have no ability to make that decision. And so you folks come make a nice presentation in 5 minutes, and to Rich's point, so I'm just going rubber stamp. No, I'm not. I'm going to understand what the context of the decision is. That's where I'm at. It's not about, I don't even know the people on the ZBA, so it's not about 3 individuals or 4 individuals. It's just about the makeup of the group.
We made an appointment to the ZBA a couple of months ago.
Yep.
Well, we
That
made
wasn't it.
2, didn't we?
We did a reappointment, and we appointed somebody new. So the 2 alternates, I think,
Yep.
have been appointed by this board. I would be fine not appointing somebody tonight, but having a recommendation from the ZBA that they don't need to fill that seat. Because, otherwise I think it's just us holding some power over the ZBA because we're disappointed in their performance, to not give them an alternate versus to ask for if they need somebody to fill that seat, or if they're comfortable waiting until the term, which I assume is a 3-year term, until there's a 3-year term available to appoint.
I don't think it's, from my perspective, just performance. It's the structure of the ZBA, right? So adding, the alternates that we've appointed recently, we're burning them out, and because they go to these meetings and they're not allowed to participate, right? So that's very new from how we've done it in the past. So I think that what I think most residents hope is that they're kind of being judged by a committee of their peers when they go in there, and I think as a ZBA member, to volunteer in that role, which is very thankless and very technical, you need to have people feel like that they're engaged when they're there, and so that's part of it as well. It's you're not in front of a judge or in a courtroom when you go there. You're really the ZBA's role is to work with residents to try to find the best outcome for the community, and so I think we want those voices to be heard. So. I think we need to obviously it's a short timeline with the March appointment, so
I mean, if that's the case, and I don't disagree because I don't know, like I said, I haven't, but if that's the case, to me, it's not to withhold an appointment of an alternate, but is to call the ZBA to come report to this board on how they're working, on what we're hearing, but on paper, what we're hearing from residents, and present that to the ZBA. The charter gives this board the power to call any other board, including the ZBA, to come report and understand how that can be worked on. But to say that we're not appointing anybody and then to have conversations behind closed doors, that doesn't fix the, the residents having, trust in the process, right? To instill trust in the process, we need to have the ZBA sitting here and explain to them and tell them what our concerns are in an open
But
meeting.
Mario, just to be clear,
Yeah.
there's no conversations going on behind closed doors about anything. The conversation about ZBA is here tonight. I haven't had a conversation with anybody about anything.
I've just attended ZBA hearings.
Yeah.
So that's the only reason why I know. So, and sometimes if people see you there in the audience, then they give you a call afterwards, and that's or email you, and that's what happens. And,
That's 100% what happens.
Yeah.
To your point, Mariano, is I think those conversations are forthcoming, and I just don't feel comfortable adding another body until those conversations take place and we get to the bottom of this, I guess is my point. Because at this point, we have a lot going on this board level, and we haven't been able to dive into those issues. We had new town council come on board. We have new policies and procedures being put in place. We have staff that are trying to work through these different policies and procedures at the ZBA level, and it's just a hot mess right now. And I just think, I would be doing no one a favor by appointing another body to that board until some of that gets sorted out. And I think that's, that is, maybe after town meeting, we begin those dialogues. And that's, that's where I sit.
Yeah, no, I agree with Mariano. We should, the ZBA should be before the board at some point soon.
Yeah, I mean, we've had every other board, right? We've had the Board of Health, we've had the school committee here, we've had.
I don't know that we've ever had the
We've never
ZBA,
had
so,
the ZBA here.
so might as well.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I agree. So that's kind of where I sit. Again, nothing against either candidate, very qualified candidates. I'm just concerned. We've also had a ton of turnover there. I mean, I think we've done 9, we've done 9 appointments since I've been elected, 18 months ago. So.
Well, we blame that on you, Rich.
Yeah. So. No, I mean, it's
Now we know
a
what the problems are.
it's all my fault. I'll take the blame. That's fine.
I mean, I just will add that it does bring to light, there's an alternate position here, gets posted. Seems to be that there's something that needs to be worked out prior to that being posted, especially given the short term of it. This is one of, it's not the only, but I think the few positions that have come before us with more than one candidate since I'm aware of since March. So I think there's also just a broader positions and engagements, and I know we have things that are very difficult to fill and boards that need all of their members present in order to make a quorum. So there is something to be said for there being interest in this position at this point, and we don't want to dissuade people from applying to open positions at the town in these volunteer positions because they're necessary. They're important to how things run in Winchester, and having somewhere where there is interest and we have 2 strong candidates come forward, and then deciding that we're just going to punt that down the road because of some other things that maybe weren't brought to light in the right timing becomes problematic in trying to fill other roles. I think we just need to be cognizant of that as.
Yep. No, I mean, I'll certainly take the blame for, it getting noticed out there. I think, we have a great staff that, sees these things open up, see people resign, and they just, they get to work and trying to fill positions. So, certainly I'll take the blame on that. But I just, there's been a lot going on in the last several weeks, that includes the ZBA initiatives and stuff for this, that frankly, staff, that this board hasn't had time to consider. And I just think we need to do that in a good fashion before we add another body. So I would be inclined to leave the position open tonight. That's what I would say. And revisit it down the road. I think they have 2 alternates. The way they're operating, that's more than enough for the board to operate sufficiently. Somebody, rather than taking a vote, that's where I would sit, but it's up to everyone else.
I'm okay with that as long as we are looking in our agenda. I know we're going to town meeting, but in the near future to have some sort of conversation about it publicly.
Yep.
And because it is important. It's been it's a hard thing to have visibility to, because it's not necessarily in front of you all the time unless you're going to those meetings. So
yeah, I mean, I think yes, I think we're well intended to address those and begin that dialogue. The issue has been that they've kind of come to light, early fall, and we've just been, I'll be the first to admit, we've been slammed with, all different other priorities that, we're trying to move for fall town meeting. Everyone comes back in that September time period and it's like go time. And that's when a lot of this stuff, kind of came to light. And I know, I don't want to speak for staff, but I know there's stuff sitting out there that they haven't had a chance to review, that the ZBA is kind of bringing forward and stuff. So I just think we'll get there, and hopefully after town meeting, maybe December, January, when it's a little slower, hopefully, we can do that.
I'm fine with leaving the position open as long as we agree that we're going to get some kind of resolution or visibility on it before this position comes open for its full 3-year term.
Yep.
So
That would be the goal.
So we need a motion. What's the decision here? What's a? Patty, come on.
And it's
We
really actually just the consensus of the
Okay.
board that they want to,
No.
yeah, because you're not making a motion.
All right, is that the consensus of the board?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's my consensus too. So that's 3 of us. That's the consensus. So I guess that would be the consensus.
And if we're connecting with the chair of the ZBA too to, I don't know, when do we say, early December agenda?
Yep.
Yeah, we'll shoot for that. Absolutely. All right. So I thank you, gentlemen, for coming out tonight. I appreciate you
I was
applying.
going to suggest if it would help the discussion if I withdrew my application.
One question, if I may. The tie goes to the runner, but which one of us is running? And again, I salute the board for being willing to take on the role of the select board. I mean, I don't know how you members do it.
I'm going to brag. I held the high hurdle records at Princeton in 1971.
So we know who to won the race.
You should have said that before. We would have helped.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
All right. I'm going to take Nathan Ray's here. I know he's been here for a while, so I'm going to take him next from the MBTA. Come on up, Nathan. Then we'll get to swim Winchester. Thanks for being patient. Kind of a busy night. So Nathan's here to update us on the MBTA project, where we've been, where we're headed for the next couple of months, right?
Yes.
All scofflaws in the parking.
Yep. We'll get there too.
All right.
I'll let you do your presentation, then we'll open up for questions.
Sure, yeah.
Thanks.
How are you? Good, how about you?
Good, thanks.
Yeah, so we're about we had NTP with notice to proceed in December last year, and now we're in November. This is the third time presenting. I'm going to do back in December, so this is our quarterly update. So just, I think everybody knows what the project is, you know, brand new station. Accessible platforms, canopies, everything you would normally see in a station, ramps, elevators. This is a rendering of the Aberjona lot, where there's be an elevator there on that side. Total project cost about $50 million. So where we've come since the last presentation, I think Anthony was here last time. Demolition work at Laraway lot is, should be Laraway Road, is wrapping up. Then you have the demo there at the bridge. We took off the platforms on each side of Waterfield Road. And then down at the Aberjona lot, the last picture there's a ramp going in, pedestrian ramp up to the platform, and that's well on its way. We'll be starting generally from the southerly direction, working north, so the steel will start in the south in Aberjona and the Waterfield kind of sides, and then work north. That's the way that we're progressing. Granite stone removal was continuing this past quarter. You see that middle picture is demolition of that top. So once the stone is removed, you have this concrete wall of the viaduct that's there, and that concrete was quite poor, so we had to demo it down to where we're hitting sound concrete, and that water you see spraying there is dust control. One of the two top complaints that we've been getting in the project are vibration and dust. So we've been trying to, well, I should add parking as a I think people know about parking.
Always at the top of the list.
I think parking should be number one. That's what I meant to say. And then demolition is continuing behind Thompson Street. We're actually, the worst of it is over. Thompson Street was a real, it was delicate. It was delicate because there was a lot of overhanging portions of the ramp and the platform that had to be demolished and it actually went over some of the businesses there on Thompson Street. The property line is like right on the back of those businesses. And so that was a huge milestone to get that over with, you know. And now we're just finishing demo of that ramp right now, working south away from the photo. Drilled shafts. We're down to 3 drilled shafts that are left. So that should be wrapping up. They want to be wrapped up on Friday. And so those cranes will be demobbing from site. And again, another milestone. And then you have start of the ramp foundation there, the Aberjona, and the elevator pit there at the Aberjona lot as well. Looking ahead for the fall and winter, demolition, the large machinery will be moving off site in the next few weeks or so, about a month, and then there'll be some demolition, some smaller demolition continuing throughout the rest of the fall. Aberjona Waterfield sections, the drilled shafts, like I said, are wrapping up, and then there's other smaller equipment that's installing micropiles behind Thompson Street, so that'll be going on. Then we'll be moving up to the platforms. Steel will be starting in early March or so, late winter. You'll start seeing steel at the Aberjona lot appearing. Quill rotary section, we're installing some micropiles there because there's a section of the platform that goes over the rotary there on one side. Laraway Road section, we're going to be construction of the ramp that's there. Drilled shafts are wrapping up there. Aberjona Waterfield sections, the elevator foundations you saw there on both sides. There's an elevator on both sides. We ran into a few underground obstructions, rock and things like that have slowed us down a bit, but the contractor's been quite diligent and combined with the consultant to mitigate and sort of redesign as needed with those inevitabilities that show up on projects. Of course, we still have Wedgemere open. This is alternatives transportation for our patrons. You can go to, there's a bus stop at Main and Vine Street, and then there's a Wedgemere station, of course. And then, so I'm back at the select board in December. I'm actually late for this. I should have been here in September. So I'll be back in December, and then there's a public meeting also that we'll be having in December. So in a couple of months, those will be happening. Project email address still there, construction hotline. Yeah, we've been getting, like I said, complaints about the parking. I met with Rich last week on Thursday, and there's dust and vibration, because obviously Thompson Street, we're right in the middle of everything, right? I mean, if we could have put a big curtain around the whole station, that'd be great, but we just can't. And so I think, my understanding is that we've been quite diligent on the ground level in sorting problems out. The parking has been an issue, we understand that. I think we're better at controlling rodents than we are at controlling parking. So I asked my guy, we have an RE, resident engineer on site, and he has 2 inspectors, and they were going out every morning. He said he went out this morning, and there's a noticeable decrease in parking in the Averjona lot. I don't know if you went out, Rich. Yeah, so we understand that. We worked with Beth early on to, try to mitigate that, and we'll have to look for ways to keep encouraging that. I think you guys are helping with that as well, so.
We're on it.
Yeah, yeah. So we did get one compliment from a station abutter. I think there was a text message sent to somebody somewhere. It's real, from Thompson. It's a Thompson Street person. They sent it to our contractor, anyway, praising the foreman and his team. I think there was a problem with vibration in the shop, one of the shops there on Thompson Street. So they were able to mitigate the problem quite quickly and help people, kind of coexist with our project. So.
Signed S-Bot.
Yeah, yeah. I sent it. No, I'm just kidding. And then just a few other things. We have about 50 employees on site, just so you're aware, if it means anything. There's about 50 people on site at any given time. And then that's about it. I don't know if there's any other questions at all.
So, I'll give you another compliment. I think the work you guys are doing is tremendous. There's no question about the quality of the work. Scott and his team are very responsive. He hears it a lot from all sides, as do us sometimes. But I think you guys are doing fantastic work. It sounds like things are on schedule at this point,
yes,
which is great. We like to hear that because, as you say, it's in the center. It's a disruption. But I think you guys have been responsive and listened to us when we've had complaints. So I could certainly see how you would get a compliment like this from one of our merchants. And certainly, Thursday we met about the parking issues. I did go by Friday. I went by, let's say Monday. It seems like that the message has been delivered. I know there was a number of tickets written, I think somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 or 40 that day. And so I think the message has been clear that you just can't take up those spots, that are open to the public, especially some that are in front of our businesses. We have people parking in front of Winchester Drug, around the Rotary, in the parking lot. When we went out, you and I, we were just picking them off here and there. So certainly, definitely an improvement. Hopefully it will continue, because as we stressed when I was at the meeting, this is our merchants' busy season. A lot of these merchants, this is either make it or break it during the season, and we have to, given the closures that are out there, we have to have those spots accessible. And I think Scott and your team was very receptive to that, and kudos to you for correcting the problem, as quickly as you did after we met. But it will be something that we monitor. We've given the direction to our police to be on the lookout for that. And as we all agreed at that meeting, the only way they're going to learn is to ticket them, unfortunately. So it's nothing personal against the employees. They're doing great work, but we had an agreement. This was an issue. Parking's always an issue in Winchester. And we reached that agreement where you could park, where you couldn't park, just to aid our businesses so that, when the station is open, we have a center that people want to come visit, and businesses left there. So I appreciate you meeting with me on the whim on Thursday, and I think it was Thursday. They all blend together these days. And addressing the issues, and certainly I'll drive by every morning like I do now at 7 a.m. and see how we're doing for parking and report back. So, but it has been good for the last 2 days. So thank you for addressing those, and thank you for all the hard work you guys are doing out there. If we can just get the parking right, we'll be fine.
Yeah. Thank you for your patience.
Questions, comments? Okay. So we'll see you back in December. Just keep in mind, like I said, this is our busy season for our merchants. They're a little on heightened angst around this time of year anyways, because they don't know what the season will bring.
Sure.
But there's a couple of initiatives that the chamber will be doing, to try to promote business downtown. So anything your crews can do to just make it, as clean and safe as you can. You're doing a good job with the different, areas like the Quill Rotary down by, underneath the other overpass. Just making it pedestrian safe, especially as the bad weather starts to roll in, and just leave those parking spaces open for our customers and employees. That would be great.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Nathan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nathan.
All right. Next up, Swim Winchester. Carolyn's here. How are you?
Just an arrow to advance from here. Great, thanks.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Hi, welcome. Thanks
Just
for having
introduce
us.
yourselves and take it away.
I'm Carolyn Chambu, president of Swim Winchester and a Winchester resident.
I'm Gary Cockluto with Fenwick McCready Architecture and also a Winchester resident.
Okay, great. So thank you so much for having us for our 6-month update. On the next slide, I'll just show our main progress. We hired Fenwick McCready Architecture to deliver a preliminary conceptual design for a proposed aquatic center. And the bulk of the presentation this evening will be Gary walking through some of the design options. I've provided a list of the study and design team led by Gary, a senior associate at FMA, with 2 other architects, including one of the partners, Deborah Fenwick. The other components were Water Technology, Inc., GEI for geotechnical work, VHB, who has worked with the town before, and environmental and site engineering, a structural engineer, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems engineer, and then RLB was the cost estimator. Through the project, we've developed a 2-story and a single-story design options, and they both fit within the 1.55-acre site that's been conditionally approved for Swim Winchester in the corner of Skillings Field. And so we're currently finalizing cost estimates for those options. So the second slide here, I just sort of list some of the key components of the design project that you'll see from Gary. He helped define critical site and structural requirements. So this helped us determine sort of approaches for the pool elevation, foundation design, and an overall approach to the site, addressing strategies for the soil and drainage, utilities, working with the adjacent field space, parking, emergency access. And then we also have begun investigation of permitting requirements for use of the field or building on the field. Throughout the process, there's been engagement with Beth's office, others in the town. We've met with Gary and I met with the friends and neighbors of Skillings Field at the end of the summer, and we've received sort of feedback and design about the design options sort of throughout the design project. So I will hand it over to Gary for his presentation of the design.
Great, thank you very much, Carolyn. So I think everyone on the select board probably is aware of the long history of this project in a night where we're talking about long-standing projects on the agenda tonight. So we went back and started looking at the original site that was earmarked for the project, which is this northeast corner, obviously, of Skillings Field. It's about 1.5 acres, as Caroline noted. And so just to make sure everyone's familiar, I'm sure everyone knows where this is intended to be. This is the location, and it abuts the softball field and the baseball field, and you can not see because it wasn't striped at the time, but subsequent to this project starting up, the grass field has been restriped up in this area. It does overlap a little bit of the Swim Winchester proposed site, and we can talk to that as we move along. But we're still looking at the same corner of the field with the same basic project. And so some boards that people may have seen on Town Day, we started to assess sort of where does a building of this size fit on the site. Swim Winchester over the last year and a half with Stu, maybe?
Mm-hmm. 2 years,
2 years now with Isaac Sports Group has done a newer feasibility study, which is a reassessment of the financial viability of the project. That came back with a building of a certain size, approximately 33,000 square feet. And so part of our goal, and as Caroline mentioned, it's preliminary design that we're doing here, is just to say, okay, we have 33,000 square feet, we have a 1.55 acre lot. How do we try and put them together in this kind of unique condition? And so we looked at the field, the building, how it relates to the fields. We looked at the building and how we can fit parking on the site. We started looking at three primary options. One was parking running straight up, a continuation of the Winchester High School student lot, and continuing that parking north-south with the building adjacent to it, which is quite a tight fit to make that work for both building and parking. A second option was to consider bending the parking lot around to surround the fields, which was a different approach. It let a little more flexibility on the site, but it does look at the Skilling's field site a little more comprehensively rather than trying to put everything on the Swim Winchester parcel that's been identified. And a third option, which really played into how we deal with swimming pools on this site, was to say, could you park underneath the building? So that we're putting swimming pools on a site that has a history of being wet. And so one set of studies we did said, what happens if you pick the building up a little bit so that you're not putting pools in the wet? And does that make any space for you to park, not buried, but on grade, but below the building? So a couple of different designs that were considered as part of this process. You'll see shortly where we ended up with that one. It's pretty evident where it wanted to go. But in terms of the building location, the building height, just by nature of the site, we're looking really at a two-story building to fit everything in. We do have a single-story option, and we really think that's the preferred option as we move along. We haven't dug as deep into that yet, but we're continuing forward with it. The big question is, where do you put the pools? Because it's not a great site from a water standpoint, and so all of these are technically feasible, but what makes the most sense to do? The typical way you'd build a pool is to stick it into the ground and dig it into the ground. Gives a building of a certain size. Another option is to say, could you take the pool and put maybe only the deep end down the ground and pick the building up a few feet, 5 feet, something like that. It saves on excavation, it saves on impacts to the site. Your building does get taller. If you think your swimming pool space is the same size, you're now picking it up a little bit higher. And then the third option, which led to that question about parking underneath the building, was what if you built the pools completely up out of the ground, basically on a second floor, and you could potentially make use of that space on the ground floor. So 3 different ideas of building scale. We put them in to scale with the train viaduct, just to get an idea of the scale of this building relative to the rise to the east. The building does push up quite close to the east of the viaduct in many schemes. And so we developed a 2-story design that had the building in that corner. We really like the parking tray that bends out around the site, rather than puts the parking right on Swim Winchester's site, because it gives a lot more breathing room around the building. And I'll walk through very quickly some of the rationale that drives that. But what we were looking at here was a 2-story building, an approach from the south, a large upper sun deck with a very clear entrance space. And part of the rationale for this is you're entering the building on the ground floor, yet the pools are on the second floor. So the thing you're coming to do at Swim Winchester is swim, but you're not walking in the building and seeing a swimming pool. And so we wanted to make it very clear about where you come into the building and why. And the other big design challenge, two others I'll point out to the group. One was how you address the fields, and how does Swim Winchester become an amenity to the field, which they've always been as part of their goal, is to work with Skilling's as a whole, and rather than take away from the field complex. What can you add along here? In this case, it adds a covered sort of, I don't want to call it an alleyway, a covered portico all along the field side. So you have some protected space looking out over to the fields, a pedestrian access point going into the neighborhood in this particular scheme. And the third big issue is scale relative to the adjacent neighborhood. So a two-story building becomes a tall building no matter what you do to it. And we've looked to scale that down. We met with the abutters and Friends of Skilling's Field, as Caroline noted, to talk about scale of the building and the heights of the building. And we do have ways to scale that down with fenestration, with massing, with limiting windows to the north, so you're limiting light pollution to the neighbors. But it is a building of a certain size. And the site plan for that building as it developed did, in fact, look at this curved parking scheme. Part of that is actually in listening to the neighbors and their concerns about the parking tray that came right down and had headlights driving right down towards the neighborhood at all times. This scheme gives you additional parking capacities. We've added 50 parking spaces beyond the Winchester High School. This current turnaround is right in this location. And that 50 vehicle number correlates with the number of spaces when Winchester is anticipated to use for its sort of daily use during school hours. So the whole joy of shared parking is that, you know, you use parking spaces when they're most available. And so Swim Winchester's peak loads are later in the evening and not during the school day. So we have a 50-car parking lot which serves Swim Winchester's immediate needs. And it becomes largely part of the Skilling's Field parking at other times. Another piece that this parking lot arrangement brings into play is emergency access. With the parking tray continuing north-south onto the field, the logical emergency access point is off the corner of Summer and Winter Street. And this was discussed early on with the fire department during Swim Winchester's development. It was discussed with the fire department when Winchester High School was developing this parking tray. It was never put in place, and there is no emergency access to this parking tray at present. By bringing the parking tray over to an east-west orientation, there's potential to consider, and we discussed with VHB the feasibility of, could you connect to the Swanton Street Bridge connector? Could this become an emergency vehicle only, still improved grass like was proposed for the high school? Could be a bicycle pathway, could be pedestrian pathway. Are there other ways to think about coming onto the site without impacting the neighborhood? And I think the neighborhood's response to that was fairly positive. Another piece I'll note about the plan here, we did note the grass field was striped following the Swim Winchester parcel starting up. And so we do propose to shift that grass field over 20 feet. There is a drainage structure on the culvert I'm sure most folks are familiar with, sort of right around this area. 20 feet was VHB's recommendation about how far you could move that before you started to have to think about it. Said, no problem, 20 feet. Go beyond that and you start to look at engineering solutions. But so this would be a 20-foot shift, which pulls the grass field. It doesn't move north-south, but it slides it directly west on the plan and just pulls it out of the Swim Winchester line of sight and parcel area so that we can develop a clear path to the neighborhood, pedestrian path. And that could be built to support emergency vehicles if needed, if the fire department wanted access along the side of the building. Lastly, from a site consideration, I'll bring up the importance of being able to stay off of this existing pedestrian path, which hugs the east side of the site and at the toe of the viaduct for the trains. And we spent a lot of time wondering about the scale of that and what walking down that path might be next to a two-story building. You know, it's not a very inviting situation. So a new path from the neighborhood along the west side by the field helps to alleviate the need to cut through that area. But this does have the main sewer connection that comes from the neighborhood. There's a sewer that runs right down the center line of that path. And so we have to stay off of that. So we don't want to build, obviously, on top of the town sewers. So we'd be pulling off that side anyway. The path could remain. The path could be pulled up if it was felt to be sort of an odd condition, but we certainly wouldn't build in that area of the site. Please jump in with questions, by all means, if anyone has them as we go along. We won't belabor the plan, but just quickly to note that this was a little dark, I apologize. But you're entering on the ground floor. There are some community rooms, community meeting spaces, and lobby space. There's a lot of the building mechanicals, pool filtration and equipment, building mechanical systems, storages, all at this lower level of the field. If there are opportunities for amenities to help support the field, like field storage or additional toilet rooms, those would be down at this level. The real Swim Winchester part of the program is up on the upper level in this two-story scheme, with the pools still an 8-lane by 25-yard lap pool and still a warm pool. That hasn't changed in Swim Winchester's program. Locker rooms, meeting space, an upper lobby so you can watch your kids in the warm pool, and storages and support spaces all for that particular program. And you can see in the layout, the field, the parcel size is still the same. It's 190 feet across from east to west. It's not a generous space to put a building of this size. It does fit on the site, but it fits with some constraints, and we're holding off that east side, as you can see here. So going through the process, we talked through materiality, we talked through ideas about how you'd approach and work with the field, we talked about built-in seating, we talked about clear story light monitors to the north so you're not bringing in direct glare into the pools. We talked about visibility and glass inside between the inside and outside of the pools. We talked about an outside sun deck, particularly on the elevated scheme, so that you can have a little more space. Even though you're elevated, it's sort of like having some outdoor patio space at the pool. Again, not designs, but concepts that were important to Swim Winchester and important to understand how they envision operating their facility. That said, that's still a good-sized building, and we have been working on the development of a single-story option just to see, can you fit a single-story option on the site, and we're happy to say that we can. Same basic site party of turning the parking tray, same questions about emergency vehicle access, the same relocation of the grass field. In this particular scheme, we've switched the pools to the west side so they look out to the field and have a more direct visual connection to the field and vice versa. And it's very much a similar plan as to what you saw on the upper floor of the other option, with locker rooms down the side, except we've now sort of saddlebagged the locker rooms with building support and mechanical systems up on the north end and immediate community spaces to the south end. One nice piece about this is it cuts about 10,000 square feet out of program space because you don't have vertical circulation, you don't have elevators, you don't have stairs, double corridors, things of that nature. So it makes a much more compact facility. It brings down the scale of the facility quite a lot. And it really opens up Swim Winchester in terms of being a part of the larger field, because the main activity is right down here on the field. So whether it's outdoor space, whether it's community support space directly off the field area, whether you're along this west side in the building or outside the building on the fields, there's a strong connection, a much stronger connection now with the Swim Winchester program to Skilling's Field, which has been part of the Swim Winchester vision from the start. So just a couple of quick views about how that may mass out. It's a very much smaller scale building, and we're at about 18 feet right now to the roof line. Again, these are very early concepts, so it could go up a little bit, could go down a little bit, but it's much more, I'm not going to call it residentially scaled, but the height of the primary volume of the building is much more residentially scaled in terms of its adjacencies to the neighbors, and in terms of just simplifying the overall volume and structure of the project. And the last slide we have, I think, is a sort of overwrought slide of where everything is. One of the key aspects of understanding this early design phase, as Caroline noted, was to really understand where's the sewer, where does water come from, where do we get three-phase power for this project, how do we put this building on this site. And so we've identified the drainage systems for the project. This is part of VHB's work, tying into the underfield drainage that's already in place where possible, direct sewer connections to that sewer line which is maintained. Right now, three-phase power is all the way down the bottom of the screen and beyond at a transformer right on Skilling's Road, which is about 700 feet away, so it's a very long primary. We're looking to see what we can do with single-phase power and what other options there are for running power to the site. Certainly, single-phase is an option if need be.
Should probably start talking to Eversource now.
Yeah.
We want to construct in the next 20 years.
Yes, yeah, we need to get on a docket. This project's been around for a long time, Beth, but 20 years, I hope we're not. I hope we're showing progress photos before then, not plans still. So there's a lot of site work to consider about how to bring all the things you need to run a facility like this to the site. Again, there's nothing that suggests this site is not workable. We've just been able to put sort of pen to paper to say, okay, here's how we'd attack it.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks so much. Right, so I just thought we'd end just by showing a sort of timeline and our next steps. So we're having an event on Thursday at the Griffin Museum. Let's dive into the details, where Gary will do a presentation in more detail for the community. And then we're going to begin discussions with the town around possible timelines for sort of permitting and various other steps that we're sort of to take the next step to develop the project. And then this winter is the capital campaign feasibility assessment that we have to probably take about 6 months. And then throughout, continued communications and partnerships with stakeholders and the town. So we're await the final sort of reports and cost estimates for the project. And I think we have a really exciting year ahead of us.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any questions? Sounds like you've been very busy. You continue to hit milestones that you set for yourselves and achieve them. So it seems like you have another busy year ahead of you. And see where we go. But certainly, it sounds like you want to begin discussions with the town. So certainly, this winter and stuff, we can certainly start dialoguing about next steps and where we go. I would imagine we need to go to town meeting at some point.
Yes, that's exactly right, the strategy for
Whether
that.
it's spring or next fall.
Right.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you
Thank
for
you.
all the work. It's an exciting project, and it'd be nice to see, Skilling's just like a centralized, have like the swim team be able to be there, just like the baseball team and the softball and lacrosse are able to be there. It would be nice to do. Yeah. And it would be a great facility for all the community, not just the school teams.
Wonderful. Thank you all.
Thank you for all the work.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. All right. Next up, we're going to talk fall town meeting articles and motions. We're going to delay talking about the Washington Swan Street LDA. I think we'll have a meeting on that later this week. Will get posted where we can discuss that. I know there's a draft LDA that's been supplied to members to review, and just give everyone a chance to review that. So we're making good progress there, but we'll wait to finalize that towards the end of the week. But in terms of fall town meeting articles and motions, so we have a couple of things to do tonight. We have to. What do we have to do? We have to
So most importantly, the warrant has to go to the printer first thing tomorrow morning, so that we can get it out to town residents. So there's two items at the table for consideration. The first is the warrant, and the second is the motions that the board will vote on for your sponsored articles. With respect to the warrant, as we discussed at our meeting, I think it was last Friday, because the board made the decision to move forward with the general override for into the capital stabilization fund to use as funding for the Lynch School improvement, traffic improvement projects, we need to reopen the warrant this evening to remove the Lynch School traffic article that was put in, and second, we need to add a new article to help offset the funding for the Washington Swan Street project. As we discussed at the meeting last week, legal counsel has identified some risk associated with using ARPA funds to close the gap between the proposed purchase price from the Melanson Development Group and the $5.27 million that the town paid to acquire the property. So we are proposing to put an article on the fall town meeting that will allow us to supplement the FY23 principal unfunded debt budget and reduce the health insurance budget proportionally by $1.22 million, which will allow us to move the money into the funded debt budget. And then the select board can use ARPA funds to pay the premium on the FY23 health insurance payments that we have to make this year. So that is what is in your packet. Proposed Article 15 is shown here.
So are we transferring from free cash into it, or
So-
is that a raise and appropriate? Is the motion?
I'll look at the motion. Yep. So we went back and forth. Mark and Stacy and I met on this actually this afternoon and went kind of back and forth. Just looking at the motion that's proposed. So the what we have here is we'd vote to increase the FY23 principal unfunded debt budget and appropriate the spring 22 town meeting by the 1.22 million. Which shall be funded by reducing the FY23 health insurance budget appropriated at Springtime meeting by the 1.22 million. There's a couple ways to do it. This is the way we kind of settled on. So there's a slight, I know there was a version that went out in the packet on Friday. We reworked the language of the article for Article 15 with the comptroller this afternoon. So it's the version that you have at table tonight is slightly different from what you saw on Friday. And then, while we're at it, the town manager had an article proposed. It was Article 28 to use free cash to fund the design and construction of maintenance work at the Cross Street culverts. This is something that we funded the design or the permitting out of free cash at fall town meeting last year. Which is to remove some of the sediment that's accumulated in the Cross Street bypass culvert. That's one of our flood mitigation projects. Working with VHB over the past week, the cost estimate for this has come in higher than I think we anticipated, and so we're going to go back to the drawing board and take a look at that instead of requesting the money from free cash. So there's three changes being made to the warrant that are being proposed. So the votes for you to take tonight are to reopen the warrant, to make those changes, close the warrant, and then presumably for you to vote to approve the warrant as presented with those changes made. And then we can move on to the motions piece second once we check off the warrant.
Any thoughts on that? Questions? So, I think, based on what we've said we wanted to do, I mean, this is really the only path forward is to, reopen it, take off the Lynch article, put the Article 15 on there. It's Article 15, right?
Yep.
And then close the warrant. And this kind of addresses what we need to.
So I have one comment. If we're going to be voting the warrant reopen, and this is the warrant, there is an edit in the motions part, but that is on the warrant because the motion for the ADUs is just to approve the motion as written, and that's the 30 days thing. It's not in this document.
So the recommendation with respect to the ADU bylaw is to keep the article unchanged and just have a revised motion that has the changes that are proposed in this document.
Because in the motion part is edited into the warrant language itself, not on the.
Right. So
the motion would amend that.
So the article itself would remain unchanged, and the motion would make those proposed changes.
Yep. Okay.
Yep.
Yep. I think that's staff's recommendation, just because there's a number of sponsors of that bill, and everyone's kind of voted a different way. Any other questions? Anyone have any issue with what staff's recommended?
No.
It makes sense to me. It just gets us to what we've instructed them we want to do here.
It makes sense. I appreciate staff jumping through a lot of hoops to make this happen. It's
a lot of hoops.
It's a little bit out of the ordinary, even for the crazy way that we do things. But the only thing that I would say is I would hope that maybe we could identify some of these articles, the ADU, Washington Swanton, probably the traffic, whatever we decide, and kind of give like an executive summary or kind of the Cliff Notes version of it. It is. I remember when I first came on town meeting and just got that packet in the mail, and it was just like a different language. And I feel like the complexity of some of these bigger articles I think it's just not, it's not accessible to people at all, and I think that's part of our,
Yep.
a little bit of the communication gap that's going on, and so,
So, I mean, I could speak to Washington
Yep.
Swanton Street. So the plan would be to send out like a memo, like we did with Waterfield, and have all the documents together. We have that working group working on the financial model, a joint financial model. I know Mario, you're on that committee. We've been working on the LDA,
Yep.
and kind of put that package nice and neat on the website, but, you know, give people a memo that kind of gives us the Cliff Note version of what we're doing, why we're doing it. And then have that information session, I think it's on the 2nd of November, for town meeting members. So I could speak to that part of it. The ADU stuff, I know Brian Kelly, Planning Board, have been working hard. They had a session last week to publicize that. So hopefully, you know, that won't.
yeah, I mean, that wasn't well attended. I mean, I think, you know, typically that, I think people want more information. They don't necessarily want to attend an information session, so somewhere in between, you know, just for like some of the bigger things that are there, if there's a way for us to just kind of have a, you know, a short, I guess, you know, executive summary of some of the things, and I think it also helps to, and the motions do this in the background, but just identify the policy objective there so people know like why we're doing all of this, you know. So especially when you look at the capital article that we proposed, I mean, the target there in the short term is the traffic and transportation around Lynch, right? So, but
Yeah, but that's not, I guess I'm a little confused because that's not coming up. I mean, that would come up in our presentation maybe?
yes,
Why-
yeah, right,
Okay.
right, yeah. And I'm just saying that sometimes just the language of everything isn't otherwise clear to people, like why we're doing what we're doing, right?
Yep.
So.
Okay.
I do think that regarding the ADU, they do have like a 2-pager that's fairly accessible summary of what they're doing that I think is helpful put together by that group. So if there are materials on these articles that, and it's great for us to do without executive summary, but also if there's materials that can be shared in sort of virtually so that people don't need to devote maybe, you know, they're not able to attend the full meeting, but they can flip through something on their, you know, when they have 10 minutes to look at it. That'd be good.
Mhm. Where would those be found on the?
Well, there's the FAQ section, and it really keeps getting, you know, bigger because we keep adding to it as people ask questions. But it's, but you know, Brian has the most updated version of that. So, but
Maybe an email sent out to all town meeting
Yep.
members a week before town meeting or something. Here's the link to the FAQ for these articles.
Yep.
That way, a lot of town meeting members, I think, feel like they show up to town meeting, they watch a 5-10 minute presentation, and then they're supposed to vote when they, you know, and they didn't have enough time to think about it. Because, you know, some of the language is pretty dry. I like the graphics that Brian had in the presentation that he showed us here for the ADU that had, you know, who's living in which one. I think that's very informative of what the policy objective is, I think.
Yeah.
So.
All right, so any other comments on opening the warrant, closing it? All right, hearing nothing, we want to make some motions to officially do this.
I move that the Select Board reopen the Fall 2022 Town Meeting warrant and make the following changes. First, remove the article for the Lynch School proposed traffic improvements. Second, remove the article for the Cross Street bypass culvert maintenance. And third, to add a new article to adjust the FY23 operating budget by increasing the principal unfunded debt budget and reducing the health insurance budget. And then to close the Fall 22 Town Meeting warrant.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, great.
And then we need a vote to officially kind of issue the warrant, approve the warrant.
I move that the Select Board approve the Fall Town Meeting warrant as presented with the modifications previously voted this evening.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, passes.
Great. We will get it printed.
Just in nick of time.
Do we need a third?
Yeah, so I'll just to review that was the warrant. So the next piece of the conversation is to look at, the second document that's here at table tonight is the motions for the boards, for the articles that the board is sponsoring. The ADU is co-sponsored by the planning board, the select board, the Affordable Housing Trust, and the Housing Partnership Board. And actually, I just noticed one typo. It's not the Affordable Housing Trustee Committee, it's the Affordable Housing Trust. So that will just be a typo that we will correct before it goes to the printer. As Mariana mentioned, there were some changes proposed to the ADU bylaw as a result of the conversations over the past few weeks since the warrant has closed. So those proposed changes will be made in the motion. Article 1 is just the typical reports. That's just the standard article. The next article is Article 14, which is the LDA for Washington Swanton. So there's a motion there that was drafted by council. Article 15 is the article we just talked about that talks about the transferring money from the health insurance budget to the principal funded debt. Will allow us to free up some money to pay the difference in the ban between the purchase price and the amount we expect to receive from Melanson in March of '23. So this motion was developed by Stacy and Mark and I this afternoon. Article 16 is the motion with respect to the Griffin Museum amendment of their lease, and that motion was developed by council.
Do you have a question,
I
Mario?
have a question on 15.
Yep.
Are we able to make a transfer that is contingent from ARPA that is contingent on this article passing?
Are you able to vote the ARPA funds?
The select board make a transfer from ARPA into.
Well, I'd have to talk.
Should we wait until?
I think we should wait until after. Yeah, because you're going to be voting to pay the health insurance premium directly.
Okay.
So I think we should wait until after the town meeting vote goes through. Article 16 is, as I said, the Griffin Museum. Article 17 is the standard article we have every year with this Transportation Network Receipt Fund. It's a small amount, and that will be used to partially pay for the RRFB project we're proposing at Leonard Field. Article 18 is the transfer of funds from the general fund to a special account for the state opioid settlement money that we've received to date, which is just over $38,000. Article 19 is the rescind any borrowing authorizations, and the amount is provided there. Article 20 is to vote funds into the Health Insurance Stabilization Fund that was created at Springtown meeting. That's $275,000. Article 21 is a pretty standard article we've had the past few years, which is to move $75,000 in from free cash to supplement the Eversource account, which allows us to pay for the continued use of the field engineer, and then that's a reimbursable by Eversource. And then Article 22 is the appropriation for the construction of the permanent pumping station for the Arbor and Wendell Street area.
But there's the last moved and seconded is missing a C.
Yes.
Any questions, comments about that? Makes sense to me. I went through this afternoon. Looked good to me. So we would just need to, as our next course of action, just approve the motions, our motions.
Move that the select board approve the proposed motions in substantially the form presented for the article sponsored by the select board.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Is that
Exciting.
everything? Is that everything for the fall town meeting? Are we sure?
I think so.
All right. We got a couple hours. We can do something, I'm
It's
sure.
all Friday.
Yeah.
We don't have time for the warrant, but the motion book doesn't go out till next week.
All right. Well, again, thank you to staff for jumping through hoops for our board and to, figure out pathways to do these certain projects that are important to the town. So appreciate Beth and Mark and Stacy, really putting their heads together and figuring this out. I know it's not easy. Thank you.
Sure.
Next up, we have the January 7th override. I believe there was a sample question prepared by bond counsel in the packet for everyone. So, this is certainly happy to entertain any dialogue tonight. We would probably need to vote this on our next meeting, November 7th, because I think Mary Ellen wants.
You'll have to vote
I'm sorry.
the general override question as well as the Lynch debt exclusion question.
At our next November 7th meeting. So we have proposed language from bond counsel drafted. I think the background for the question would, go into the detail that level of detail that we've talked about, that this would be for the Lynch. Traffic improvements, to help fund those. The question is, what is the number for the override? I think the debt service calculation if we were to do all the Lynch traffic projects was $280,000 a year. We've had talk about $500,000, $300,000. So it's not a number we need to settle on tonight, but certainly just, open it up for a few minutes of dialogue if anybody wanted to talk about it this evening, what people were thinking.
I think if we could identify some of the capital projects too that could be supported by doing both, achieving both objectives. So maybe talking to Roger or Jimmy.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to figure, we could probably get another $3 million worth of projects.
Yeah.
If it was,
And the cost of waiting, right? That's the big thing that is what we need the revenue for now. So.
Yep. So maybe for our next meeting, we can have just what's on the top of the capital list for school-related projects. Is that what we're looking at?
I think so. I mean, listen,
The other couple projects that we haven't figured out how to fund is the town center, right? The sidewalk improvements around Thompson and Main Street.
Yep.
And we have drawings. We have something that
good concept. Yeah,
good concept of what we could do. It's around that amount, or it's in phases, right? So we could do one phase.
One phase for potentially $3 million. Mm-hmm. So we can certainly go back to capital on that, get that information. But I think at our next meeting, we'll probably have to put a number out there that we're looking to do. Any other questions about that tonight? So I guess start thinking about it. We'll get that information. If we have it available sooner rather than later, we'll get it to you. I can ask Mark to put that together. He works with capital. We'll go from there. Any questions on that? Any questions on the language that bond counsel put together? I think my understanding is it has to be pretty clear and concise if you're doing this to an existing stabilization fund. So I thought the language simple looked fine to me. All right. Moving along. We had a request from WinPAC to help fund the signage. You're starting to see it around, about their campaign that they're running for different, their initiative for, awareness, surrounding Down syndrome, dyslexia. So it's great to see that stuff out there. I didn't know if someone is there any discussion about this, or someone wanted to make a motion? I think we would fund this out of our gift account. Is that fair to say? Do we have funds available left?
Was there a dollar value for it?
I think we had said 100 or so. I don't know.
That was a couple $100 that we were talking about.
A couple hundred, yeah. We would say
That
up
was
to
like
a couple.
300? Up to like $300 or something?
Up to 300, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I move that we approve up to $300 out of the hospital gift account for the Winchester Special Education PAC signage reimbursement.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. We have a consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda as posted on the October 24th agenda.
All those in favor?
Aye.
One question, Rich, on the article before Beth goes. Are we co-sponsoring the Lynch project, and are we asking the schools to also co-sponsor the traffic stuff, capital stuff?
So there's no article on the
Yep.
fall town meeting about
Yep.
the traffic.
Okay.
Yep.
But I mean, as far as the capital article,
That would be at Springtown meeting,
springtime meeting, okay.
because we can't have a capital appropriation before we vote the general override.
Okay. I mean, we are going to be discussing the traffic, right, at fall town meeting.
If we discussed it, it would be discussed just in our presentation in
Okay.
Article 1.
Okay.
I don't think it would be an extensive discussion about it.
Okay.
That was the plan. I think we
Okay.
would bring it up. I don't know, where would we fit it in to discuss it?
We could ask for, to present 2 slides on it, on our recommendation on the Lynch
Yep.
article. That we will follow it up with improving traffic access.
Yeah, we can do that, absolutely. My understanding, though, is if we are a co-sponsor of the Lynch article under the moderator's rules, we don't get,
You can't speak.
we can't
separately.
speak on it separately.
We're
Well, we
currently
can
not right now. It says E EFPBC and school committee.
Yeah.
Right, but he was bringing that up.
Yeah, we can speak. I mean, I think that we can recommend favorable action and do a couple. I think it's just that there's not additional time. So if we did a minute or whatever, I don't know.
That's not my understanding of the rules
Oh,
from the
really?
moderator.
So can we talk to EFPBC? I mean, if we're
So they would-
co-sponsoring, we could get 1 slide in their
So-
presentation.
So we would- they would have to-
Currently, you're not a co-sponsor on either of the 2 articles for Lynch on the warrant. Now's the time.
Right. Yeah. That's why I was bringing it up. I mean, it seems like something we support, right? So it's weird that we're not on there, and certainly, I mean, I don't.
So just understand, I'm fine with doing that, but the mechanics of town meeting, maybe the moderator will change her mind, is that if we are a co-sponsor, they get 10 minutes to present their article. They have to yield us time in that 10 minutes in order to say anything on the article.
We can't even stand up
I
to
can't
say,
see- I can't- yeah.
we recommend favorable action because you're a co-sponsor, so.
That's how I've been led to believe how town meeting is going to work.
Well, we're not co-sponsors, right? So I don't-
You're currently not, yeah.
So there's-
we'll get asked for our.
Yeah, so here's, if we're not a co-sponsor, we'll get 3 minutes to give our spiel. If we are a co-sponsor, they have to yield their 10 minutes to us in order to speak. So is it better for us to be a co-sponsor, or is it better for us to stand up and say, we support this unanimously, we give favorable action, and give our 3 minutes? That's what I'm wrestling with a lot of these.
Yeah. I mean, I guess.
I mean, that's just the mechanics of it, as it's been explained to me, and I think
I want my
it's
3
been you as
minutes.
well. What?
I want my 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's what I would want too.
I get my 3 minutes. Otherwise, I might not get my time. They might yield, it runs over.
Well, that's the
whatever.
way I'm thinking about it. I can appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to give people.
I want both.
A peek under the
I
tent.
mean, I mean, maybe we could, maybe we say during our presentation, you know what, we voted favorable action, and we feel like we're a co-sponsor in spirit or something. I don't know. I'm just trying to work within the rules that have been provided.
We don't
Just-
have to co-sponsor.
I know, I was going to say,
That's fine.
So, all right.
I'm happy to do it.
No,
that's
that's
just
fine.
just the drawback from my understanding. And maybe the moderator will change her mind, but that's what I've been told the rules are. So I would much rather be able to have our time to give a thoughtful presentation with a couple of slides and how much go behind this.
So the ADU bylaw, you are a co-sponsor. So I don't know how that is going to work out in terms of who's leading the presentation.
So I
but-
think we've decided that the planning board's going to take the lead on that.
Yep. I don't think we need to say anything.
But that's how I knew about this.
Yeah.
This
Right, and I know that
Blue
Tom,
Book.
you know, with the COA, I think that they were the first co-sponsor of that, and then they pulled out just so they could then have a formal speaking role. So I think it's really the COA and the planning board that are leading the discussion on it. So, you know, we can make comments individually, I guess. I mean, I don't know, it just seems, it's hard to understand. But anyway, I guess I don't have to. It's just the rules, so.
It's the rules. We play within the rules, so, so that's kind of where we're at. Anything for Beth before she leaves? We just have the town manager stuff to very, very briefly mention. So I think we're gonna have a meeting on Thursday morning at 8:30.
Friday.
Friday morning,
8:45.
Friday morning, 8:30, 8:45 to discuss the LDA for Washington Swan Street.
Thank you.
Thanks, Beth.
Thanks, Beth.
Have a good night. Just briefly on the town manager search, so the period for people to submit applications has closed as of, I think, last week.
The 12th or 13th.
13th. He and I talked with Paradigm after our last meeting, explained the screening process, brought back what we had discussed at our table, and they're proceeding with that process. With the goal of completing that process by the end of November and getting us some candidates for us to then consider an interview. So the screening committee has all been contacted. I think they have their first meeting Thursday with Paradigm, and the process is moving forward. Any questions? Anything that I've missed that we need to mention?
It may be helpful just for the timeline of, start with the screening committee starting the process this week in hopes to have candidates to interview end of November, start of December, just so that we're able to continue to move that along before the holiday season takes everyone kind of out of things.
Yeah, so I would anticipate, candidates to us the week of November 28th, with us maybe conducting interviews the first week of December, and maybe trying to make a decision by the end of that first week, like 7th, 8th, or 9th. I think that was the timeline that we had talked about in order to get an offer to somebody. That gives us, a little time to work a contract before the holidays. And, typically a 60-day notice if they're leaving another job or something. So, that person may not start until February. So it's kind of the timeline we were working within. Everything. See how it goes. But that's the plan. Any questions?
Nope.
All right. Stay tuned on that. I think that's everything, right? Just got a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you, WinCam. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.